The environment provides us with the perfect trigger point, and we hit shame, or we hit fear, or we hit rage, or we hit grief, or we hit whatever it is that we hit that triggers us, and heart closes down, right? Heart closes down. We suddenly know that we are not living from a place of like deep soulful truth. And it's really hard to be loving in those moments, right? It's really hard to act from the highest place. It's like really tough. This is step one. We catch it. We catch it. We know our markers. Know what that feels like. Know what that feels like. And live life at a pace where you can catch it. Because typically what happens when those start to happen, things speed up. It starts to speed up, right? Everything starts to speed up. And so slow it down. Slow it down, 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 right? So it's a pace where I'm able to observe my markers. I'm able to catch the fact that my heart is not open, that I'm starting to feel like I'm getting thrown off kilter, that I'm starting to close down, that I'm starting to skate out. Part of step one, we'll call it step 1B, is to know what it feels like when your heart is closing down, or when you're off center point. Those words are so beautiful. It's heart's closing down, but that's not what it feels like for all of us. For some of us, it's I'm not in my body. For some of us, it's I get defensive, protective, armored up. For some of us, it's I get projective and I get angry. For some of us, it's I want to get really small and I want to go run and hide. So know yours. The next time you're in a triggery moment, just watch, like get so curious. And when we don't have judgment around it, we'll see 10 times more. So just without curiosity, right? Fall into that radical acceptance of self, that absolute unconditional love, and just go, wow, what is here? What do I do? What do I do when shame grabs me? What do I do when I feel like I'm up against the wall and I'm pinned in a corner? What do I do when I'm in a triggered moment? And just observe and watch, maybe write a list. You might have like 45 things, or it might be one really predominant one, like, oh, this is my go-to. I fucking spin it around, I twist it, and I make it your fault. I'm really good at that one, by the way. Really good at that one. So you know the markers, you know that you're in that moment, you own the fact that you're in that moment. Cool, I'm in a triggered moment, my heart is closing down, things are starting to get foggy and fuzzy, I'm getting armored, I'm starting to get small, I want to hide in a corner. And you just mark it, right? I'm in a triggered moment. Step 2, power in the pause. Pause. Fucking pause. Pause. Just pause, right? Just like take a breath, take a moment. Maybe you have to say, if it's a moment when you're with other people and you're in a conversation, like, oh, I just need to take a deep breath here. I'm spinning out, right? And you can kind of, if it feels right, just feel into what helps you in that moment. What helps you? Pausing, breathing, a little bit of humor, calling yourself out, like, hey, this is a bit triggery for me. Like, let's just take a second here, right? Because now you're bringing it to the surface. You're giving it space to air itself out, and you're loving it, right? We're loving it. We're radically accepting. I'm triggered, right? I'm about to let it rip. I am about to go off. I do this with my mom all the time, right? I do this with my mom, right? The thing will happen because it's been a conditioned thing since I was like 2. It'll happen and I'll be like, oh, Mom, I really want to rip your throat out, right? And I do it jokingly and like laughing. She's like, yeah, I know. I really want to belittle you and diminish you. And I'm like, yeah, wow, we're in that thing. God, I fucking love you. I fucking love. So then I do pattern interrupt, right? So it's pause, pattern interrupt. Fuck that thing off. Like the way that you were going to respond, right? Which is, I'm going to get really small, get really big. I'm going to stop loving. The thing that I do is I just love the shit out of my mom in that moment, right? Like, Mom, I love you. Right? And then it breaks the pattern. It breaks that old energetic thing where I respond this way, she responds this way, the thing in me does that thing in her does that thing. And it's just unconscious, habitual responding to crap, right? It's the same thing when the heart closes down because of shame. It's patterned. It's just a patterned response. That's it. And so if we can come at it with some love, some acceptance, a little bit of humor, a pause, pattern interrupt, knowing our markers, we're in power. We don't lose control and go into unconscious. And what starts to happen is that starts to shift. It starts to shift. That pattern response, it shifts. And then what starts to happen is those things no longer have control over us. They no longer have power, right? They're no longer these unconscious power demons sitting in the basement. We just kind of giggle about them, right? Like, whoa, there it is. There's the little 2-year-old Sabrina who wants to do the thing to her mom that she's always done. And there's no power to it. And then what happens is once it has no power, it starts to diminish even more. So then it doesn't cause the triggery response in the first place. It doesn't cause the shame, which causes the heart closure. Does that make sense? Yeah. And it's a practice. It's a practice. And so we want to walk into this very compassionate, like, this is where I'm at right now with shame or with fear or with this situation or in this family dynamic. We walk in with absolute compassion, knowing that this is not a one and done. This is not a one and done, right? These are pattern responses that we've had for years and years and years and years. There's a nervous system ingrainment, an emotional ingrainment, an energetic ingrainment. But the more that we can bring grace, here's my last little tip on this one. Call in the grace. You get into a spot and you're overwhelmed and you're like, oh, I'm gonna lose it. Just ask for a grace flood. Ask for a grace flood. We did a grace flood today, right? Just ask for a grace flood and you might not feel any grace. You might just feel rage. But all you do is just go, okay, this is beyond me. Like, I just did this last week. This is beyond me. This one's beyond me. Like, I need a little help here. Like, anyone, anything, any flavor of shocked, anything. I need a little help. And you just call it in, call it in. And you will be amazed at what happens for you, at the capacities that come online, that suddenly you're able to say, Mom, I fucking love you, in a way that you would never have been able to say it before. Or you're able to keep your heart open amidst shame. And maybe the tears flow and they're releasing the shame as you have your heart open, being so vulnerable, so raw, so open, so real, right? And that's one of the huge energetic releases potentially in that moment, is like, wow, this is what's alchemically shifting those deep ingrained patterns that I have. That was the perfect question to support what we did today in practice.